The snow fell like a whispered prayer that Christmas Eve, each flake catching the glow of the restaurant's golden lights. Inside, Evelyn Chen sat alone at table 7, checking her watch for the 14th time. 6:47 p.m. He was 47 minutes late. The waiter hovered nearby with that particular brand of pity reserved for the obviously stood up, and Evelyn could feel the eyes of other diners skating across her face before darting away. She'd been rejected before, dismissed in boardrooms, underestimated in negotiations, ghosted after promising first dates, but something about tonight made her chest feel hollow. Maybe it was Christmas Eve, maybe it was the fact that she'd actually hoped. This time would be different. Her best friend, Mira, had set this up 3 weeks ago with the kind of aggressive optimism that made Evelyn simultaneously grateful and exhausted. "His name is James," Mira had said, brandishing her phone like a trophy. "Single dad, works in maintenance at my building. And before you say no, he's kind, Evelyn. Genuinely kind. When's the last time you dated someone kind?" Evelyn hadn't answered because they both knew the truth. She'd spent the last decade building her late father's struggling tech company into a Fortune 500 empire, and somewhere between hostile takeovers and quarterly earnings reports, she'd forgotten what kindness in a partner even looked like. Now, watching a couple at the next table feed each other tiramisu, Evelyn felt the particular loneliness that only a crowded room can provide. She pulled out her phone, ready to text Mira with some cutting remark about wasted evenings and misplaced faith, when a commotion erupted near the entrance. A man burst through the door in a rush of cold air and desperation, his coat dusted with snow, his dark hair wild and wet. He was breathing hard, scanning the restaurant with the frantic energy of someone who'd just run a marathon. His eyes, warm brown, rimmed with exhaustion, found hers, and even from across the room, Evelyn saw the relief crash over him like a wave. "Evelyn," he said, weaving between tables with the kind of graceless urgency that made several diners look up from their meals. "I'm James. I'm so sorry I'm late." Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of face that had probably been handsome before stress had, carved shadows beneath his eyes. His coat was worn at the elbows, and there was what looked like a small purple handprint on his shirt collar. He collapsed into the chair across from her, still catching his breath. "I know," he said before she could speak. "I know how this looks. I'm almost an hour late to a first date on Christmas Eve, and you have every right to leave or throw your drink at me or both." He ran a hand through his wet hair, leaving it standing at odd angles. "I have a 5-year-old daughter, Sophie. My sister was supposed to watch her tonight, but she got stuck in a snowstorm upstate. I've been calling every babysitter in my phone for the past 2 hours. Finally, my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, no relation, agreed to sit with Sophie, but I had to wait until she finished her shift at the hospital. And then my car wouldn't start, so I ran here. 12 blocks in the snow." He was talking fast, the words tumbling out in an anxious stream, and Evelyn found herself leaning forward despite herself. There was no rehearsed charm here, no smooth recovery, just raw, honest panic. "You ran 12 blocks, she repeated. "I ran 12 blocks. He pulled off his coat, revealing that purple handprint more clearly, definitely finger paint. "Because Mira told me you were smart and successful and probably way out of my league, but also that you'd been hurt before and deserve better than another. Disappointing night. And I thought, I'm probably not the better you deserve, but I could at least show up and be honest and maybe not completely waste your time." Something cracked open in Evelyn's chest. She'd been proposed to across expensive tables by men in $1,000 suits who'd spent more time checking their phones than looking at her face. She'd been courted by venture capitalists who saw her, company before they saw her, but no one had ever run through the snow to meet her. "You should have called," she said, but her voice was softer than she'd intended. "My phone died at 6:15, he admitted, pulling the dead device from his pocket as evidence, which is when Sophie decided she needed to paint me a picture for good luck. Hence," he gestured to his collar, "I tried to clean up. But there's only so much you can do when you're also Googling how to jumpstart a 2009 Honda Civic in a blizzard." The waiter appeared, skepticism written clearly on his face. "Are we ready to order?" "Yes," Evelyn said, surprising herself. "We are." Over the next hour, as they shared stories, Across a table that felt less like a battlefield and more like a sanctuary, Evelyn discovered things she hadn't expected to find. James was funny in an understated way, self-deprecating without being pitiful. He'd been a widower for 3 years. His wife had died from complications after Sophie's birth, and he spoke about her with the kind of gentle honesty that suggested real healing rather than avoidance. He worked in building maintenance but dreamed of starting his own handyman business someday. He read Sophie 3 books every night before bed. He made terrible coffee and excellent pancakes. He'd once tried to fix his own toilet and flooded his entire bathroom. Mira never mentioned any of this, Evelyn said, watching the way candlelight played across his tired, open face. Probably because it doesn't sound impressive on paper, James said. Broke single dad who flooded his apartment doesn't exactly scream. Great catch. No, Evelyn agreed. It screams something better, real. James studied her across the table, and she felt seen in a way that had nothing to do with her net worth or her corner office. Mira told me you run your father's company, that you built it from almost nothing after he got sick. I did. That's not in spite of being kind, James said quietly. That is kind. Honoring someone you love by fighting for what they built. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. She'd been called brilliant, ruthless, visionary. But kind? When was the last time someone had seen past the armor to the actual woman underneath? The dinner stretched into dessert, then coffee, then the restaurant staff pointedly stacking chairs around them. When they finally stepped outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the city transformed into something cleaner, softer. Christmas lights reflected off the white blanketed streets. I should let you get back to Sophie, Evelyn said. I should, James agreed, but neither of them moved. Thank you for staying. I half expected to find an empty table when I got here. I half expected to leave, Evelyn admitted. But something made me wait. Something like Mira's endless meddling. Something like hope. James smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise. Can I be completely honest? I'm terrified right now. You're successful and brilliant, and you probably have 100 better options than a guy who shows up late, covered in finger paint. But Sophie keeps telling me the universe sends people when you need them most. And I think maybe I needed you tonight. I think maybe I needed you too, Evelyn whispered. They exchanged numbers, and this time James made sure his phone was charged. As he walked away, trudging through the snow toward the subway, Evelyn stood watching until he turned the corner. Then she pulled out her own phone and texted Mira. Thank you. Merry Christmas. 3 days later, she met Sophie, a whirlwind of questions and enthusiasm who presented Evelyn with a carefully wrapped painting of a snowflake. 6 months after that, James started his business with an investment from an anonymous backer who believed in second chances. A year later, on Christmas Eve, they returned to the same restaurant, this time with Sophie between them, and the waiter who'd watched Evelyn wait alone smiled as he seated their table for 3. Sometimes the best gifts arrive late, Evelyn thought, watching her family's reflection in the golden window. Sometimes they arrive covered in snow and finger paint, carrying apologies and honesty instead of roses and promises. Sometimes kindness wears worn coats and runs through blizzards just to show up. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, love looks nothing like you, expected and everything like what you truly needed all along.